All right, so hello and welcome to this session of the SLN pre-conference, Understanding Parent, Sibling, and Self-Advocate Perspectives. My name is Becca and I'll be the moderator for this session. While our conference officially kicks off this afternoon, we are so excited that you can be with us for this pre-conference. The Sibling Leadership Network warmly welcomes you. If your camera is on, we can see you. And if your microphone is on, we can hear you. So please mute yourself and remain on mute. Please use the chat box or raised hand function for any questions that you may have. As a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be made available to SLN members in our online archives. I'll place a link in the chat box for the handouts. If you are pre-registered to receive continuing education credits, we'll need to verify your attendance. So if you can type your name in the chat box now and send it to everyone, just that way the chat will save for us and we can go back. You'll also be asked to do this at the end of the session. So please make sure that your name is also matches the name you registered for. So you want to rename your Zoom meeting here. And now I'm happy to turn it over to our wonderful presenters.
Hi, welcome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and joining us for this pre-conference workshop for the Sibling Leadership Network Annual Conference. We're going to each introduce ourselves and then get started with some guiding questions and just have kind of an open discussion amongst the three of us. This session is about understanding the self-advocate, sibling, and parent perspectives, and we'll be just sharing a little bit of insight and some stories from our own lives and experiences. Eric, would you like to introduce yourself first, please?
Yeah. My name's Eric McVeigh, and I'm from Bangor, Maine, and I bring a unique self-advocate perspective because I am SAVE's representative to the SLN board. Plus, I am also the treasurer of the Sibling Leadership Network, and you know, so I definitely bring all kinds of different perspectives to the session.
Wonderful, thanks. My name is Emma Shousegarten. My day job is working with the Tennessee Council on Developmental Disabilities and Communications, but I also am lucky to get to lead Tennessee's Sibling Leadership Network, which is called TABS, Tennessee Adult Brothers and Sisters. And for the past couple of years, I've also served on the SLN board as the co-chair of chapter development. My sibling credentials, I guess, I have, I'm the older sister by 6 or 7 years, twin younger brothers. One of those twins, Evan, has autism, intellectual disabilities, and other behavioral health diagnoses. So I'm just excited to be able to share a little bit of my sibling perspective with you all.
Hi, everybody. My name is Janice Stewart-Dorch. I am coming from the parent's perspective, and I am a proud mother of 6. My second oldest son, Christian, has both autism and epilepsy. He's also been diagnosed with Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. I am here to share my unique perspective. I founded an organization called Special Needs Siblings because of the brothers and sisters in our family about 3 years ago. And since then, we have been connecting with other sibling organizations. My goal is to connect as many siblings to resources and help parents understand that supporting siblings is supporting the entire family. You can't miss them as well. So I'm look forward to sharing and talking today.
Also too, when we.
So for our first discussion portion, we wanted to share a little bit about our childhood experiences. For Eric, kind of what it was like as a child diagnosed with a disability. For me, what my sibling experiences were when my brothers and I were kids, and from Janice's perspective, kind of her experience as a parent when her children were younger. So Eric, we'll start with you. As a kid, what really helped you the most in learning self-advocacy and learning to speak up for yourself and learning about things that you were good at? Was there someone in your family or a teacher or other person in your life that helped you the most with this?
No, not really. What happened was is my deal with being a self-advocate became about because of once I left high school, I was virtually in what they call, somebody started to fall through the cracks. The department at the time decided that once I had left the school system, I was no longer eligible for um, I wasn't eligible for adult services. So I was one of those that was left in limbo down the cliff. And so down that proverbial cliff. And 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 in the mid 2000s, I became a self advocate when I realized that I really needed something. I needed something in my life, and I know that originally I was able to sign on to the Section 17 mental health with some daily living support pieces, but 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 with the daily living support pieces. But what happened is that we went to different neuropsychologists, and we went through different neuropsychologists, and the state did realize that I needed something, but they just couldn't fit that square peg in a round hole. The square peg in a round hole. They would fight back and forth to figure out because of funding. So finally, in 2016, um, when the Section 17 mental health services was was uh, was all of a sudden going through where the new administration at the time wanted to cut eligibility for folks, then we really needed to make sure that I had something. So so around that same time frame, my case manager and sister and I, we tried to apply for Section 18, which is the brain injury waiver, and then I was denied, and then all of a sudden I was denied, and then we went through appeal after appeal, and again it was one of those where they knew I needed something, but they just couldn't figure out they couldn't figure out if I was congeal at birth or not. So I was denied, and then we applied for Section 20 other related conditions, and again went through appeals and was denied that. And all of a sudden something came out where the department was audited, and a big article came out in the newspaper about it. So after my mother passed away in 2017, after she passed away in 2017, about a month later, I got a letter from the department. Oh, would you like to apply again
Wow.
for Section 20? I applied, and within a couple months later, I was placed on the waiting list. And in August of 2019, I was finally able to get a funded offer, and I started my services on January 13th, 2020.
Wow, that is a really long, it's a lifelong journey really to getting the support and help that's really helping you now live a great life. Thank you for sharing that, Eric. Um,
Yeah, I
is
just
there,
wanted to, I just wanted to share that with you because, and it wasn't just myself fighting for it. My sister was
yeah,
fighting for it. I had case managers fighting for it, and
absolutely. I love that your sister has been such a help uh, with with that really challenging journey. That's great to hear. Um, Thinking about childhood and for kids with disabilities, is there any advice that you would give parents or teachers or people who work with young kids with disabilities that you think that they should better understand um, about the experience of kids who have disabilities?
um, yeah, just my advice I would give is the fact that it's not easy. You're gonna, you're, as kids are going through the system and school system, there is that chance. I don't know how likely it'll be, but there is that chance of potential rejection when they leave the school system, and then those parents have to appeal and fight like I did, and let the state know it is not okay.
Yeah. So really building those self-advocacy skills from a young age and really helping to think in a big picture way what a good quality of life will look like, even if you're not able to immediately right after high school tap into services. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that that's an important role that people can play um, in the lives of kids with disabilities. So if we think about the sibling perspective, I'll just share a little bit about my story when I was younger. So, like I said, I'm uh, six, almost 7 years younger than my brothers. So um, they're twins, and then around age 2.5, one of my brothers, Evan, his twin is Brendan. Um, and I won't speak for Brendan, but I will just say that Brendan has a very different relationship to Evan and a different sibling experience than I do. So I can only share my own story, but I'm sure we'll talk about later in the session, just, kind of some things to keep in mind. And that would be one of them, that sibling experiences are really diverse and different. But so for me as the older sister, when we were younger and right after Evan's diagnosis, my main kind of emotional memories or experiences was, um, I wasn't too thrown by learning that my brother had this thing called autism. To me, it was still Evan was Evan, and I loved playing with both of my little brothers and just getting to see them grow up. And even though Evan, reached milestones at a different time, it didn't really impact, my view of him too much, I would say. Um, the big memory for me was starting to see that this diagnosis thing, this autism thing, was making my parents and my grandparents seem really kind of confused or stressed or worried. And as a sibling, and I think a pretty sensitive kid, that really communicated to me that I needed to step up and help and do anything that I could to make my parents stress less or their journey easier, that I needed to help Evan learn or, do these things that his therapists were trying to teach him to do. So I feel like through no fault of my parents or anyone, I just kind of naturally stepped into that role of feeling some pressure from a really young age to not only always be watching Evan, helping him learn and grow, help with his therapy goals and all of that, but also to really be the kid that was not going to cause my parents any stress, to be on my best behavior, to get good grades, to um, just fly under the radar a little bit. And I think I knew that if something was ever really, really wrong or I really needed help, I could certainly ask my parents. But on a day, kind of a day-to-day basis. I think I hear a lot of siblings of kids with disabilities, especially sisters, say the same thing, that we learn early on to kind of be self-sufficient and more independent, and because we don't want to worry our already stressed parents anymore. So that was kind of a big emotional lesson, I would say, throughout my childhood, that started to kind of take root. And we can talk later about kind of unlearning some of those lessons and asking for help when you need to. So Denise, moving on to you in the parent perspective. When your child with a disability was first diagnosed, were there any particular supports or people or resources that really helped you feel more confident and prepared and calm and supported in your parenting role? What really made a difference and helped you?
Well, firstly, both of your perspectives are I'm just happy to be on this panel to even listen and to hear both of these perspectives for my children. I'm looking back, my son is 16 now. So all his siblings, he has a brother, 17. I've been recently married, so we blended our family. So he has an older brother now that's 17. And the younger kids are ages 14, 12, and twins that are 5. So I think with the first, when I first found out that Christian was autistic, first I found out he had epilepsy. That was the first thing. And he was 2 and having seizures. After his digression, all the things that he was doing, we finally got him checked for and tested for autism, and found out when he was about 3 that he also had that. Now, when it comes to my younger set, the older kids now, the ones that are close to him in age, I definitely, I don't think that I did things the way that I am doing now. I can say that hindsight is 2020, so you could kind of get a different perspective. But I feel supported. Yes and no. I was really heavy into church at the time, and at that time, that wasn't a place that I could go to feel that support or feel any type of encouragement. In fact, it was quite the opposite. We were always praying for healing, or praying for recovery, or praying for anything. And the siblings were not part of those conversations at all. It was more like, how do I protect them from their brother, instead of let's talk about this and see how he's okay, or finding out the beauty in him as a person. It was more always the diagnosis came first, both of them. And understandably so, epilepsy causes some definitely scares. He had seizures, and he still does pretty much daily. Unfortunately, they're not controlled by medication. And his brothers and sisters are always there during seizures and things like that. I really feel like what helped me the most during that time was the internet, and joining groups and finding other parents like myself, and realizing that I wasn't crazy to be feeling overwhelmed or underwhelmed or confused. I think that finding your tribe is very important. And that also goes into not realizing my kids didn't have any support. And so that's something we'll talk about, I'm sure, later, but realizing that the whole family needs support and assistance.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we'll move on to a discussion of teen years here. Eric, let's see. So when you were in high school, or when you were a teenager, what do you think was one of the hardest things about your experiences as a teenager with a disability?
Probably one of the hardest experiences was having to go through special education, and I did that for the most part through when I was in school. Even when I was in high school, I was mainstream, but I did have some special education that I did, and I mean, and I didn't really have any issues, but there were certain things I did struggle with. I struggled with math. I struggled with some other things.
Were you able to be involved in things like clubs or sports or
Yes, I
church or
was.
yeah?
Yeah, I was the manager of different teams: basketball, football, baseball, in junior high, soccer.
Very cool. I'll stop right here and ask you, so will you talk just really briefly kind of about your relationship with your siblings? Is it just you and your sister?
Yeah, it's just myself and my sister.
Gotcha. So what is that relationship like? How
Um,
does
it,
she help you?
it's a very good relationship, and she is my rep payee, and and she does a lot.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you guys do for fun together?
Um, we just we talk on the phone, and we really don't get together for anything right now, especially due to COVID.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping at some point we can get together. When and this is a couple of years away, but eventually she's going to be moving right up the road from me. Her and her boyfriend bought a piece of land on Pushaw Road in Bangor,
That's so
and
exciting.
hopefully when they get settled, we'll be able to do more things together.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Um, so thinking about my teenage years as a sibling to um, a person with autism and other disabilities. So for me, I would say what was most helpful to me as a teenage sibling was really getting to kind of develop my own life. I mean, I still felt like being not even being a sister to both brothers, but being, a sister to Evan, who was autistic and had other, some pretty significant needs, was just really a core part of my identity. Disability stuff. Evan's life was kind of the conversation of the household all the time. It was just a really core part of our family life. So for me, um, which didn't bother me really when I was growing up. But it was so valuable and important for me to have things that I could do on my own, to have, I was in choir at school and um, did plays and was very involved with my church youth group, which let me really connect with other adults besides my parents, who were not just seeing me as John and Janet's daughter or Evan's sister, but seeing me for me and really investing a lot of time and care into me outside of my sibling role. And I think that just did a lot to help kind of build my confidence in who I was outside of a caregiver or a sibling role. So I think for folks who are supporting, who either have kids without disabilities, siblings who are in their teen years, or who are working with families that might have teenage siblings, just making sure that they have folks in their life who are noticing their gifts, who are engaging with them about things outside of kind of the disability stuff and their sibling role, asking them, about their goals and dreams and what's going on in school or with their friends or whatever. That's really important to kind of just start to develop your own adult identity outside of what that sibling of someone with a disability role can just be really all encompassing. I think especially when we're younger. So in our teen years, I think it's really important to get the support we need to start to live our own lives and figure out what our dreams are. Um, for me, the kind of the big emotional or challenging memory of those years was that I don't think I really had anyone asking me purposefully or providing me space to talk about worries or concerns that I had about the future. Looking back, I feel like if I had if I had taken the initiative to ask my parents to have those hard conversations, they certainly would have been willing to. But again, I felt like they were stressed and had enough on their plate. I knew they were worried about Evan's future too. And I think I just didn't really have maybe the courage to ask those questions. So they were just kind of percolating, you know, keeping me awake at night as a 16, 17, 18-year-old of, you know, where is Evan going to live when he can't live with mom and dad? If that's the case, it was pretty clear, I think, by this time that Evan was going to need a significant level of support, of daily support for the rest of his life. And if something happened to mom and dad, would I then be responsible for the boys? We didn't have any other, you know, really close family around, other than my aging grandparents who had their own health needs. And it's just kind of, I just have a lot of memories of, I think, some pretty significant anxiety starting in those later teen years of all of these unknowns and worries and concerns, and I didn't want to burden anyone else with them. So if I was giving advice or any words of wisdom for folks, I would just say, make sure you're offering, you know, siblings in those years the space to ask questions or to express worries or to talk about their concerns. And even if you don't have an answer right now, even if you don't know what the future will look like or, you know, the answers to their questions, I think it's just so valuable for us to have a space to air those worries and to feel like we're being heard and being seen. So that would be one takeaway that I would have looking back on my own experience. Denise, you said that you're, oh yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Well, just one question that I had briefly had for you is, have you ever been thrust yourself into a situation where you know eventually you're going to end up having to be his caregiver?
Yeah, well, so we are, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. Now that he, like you, now that he is in state services, which I won't get too into it, but it was unfortunately kind of the case, like far too many folks, in that it really had to reach a crisis point where he was having a real hard time in his early 20s living with my folks with some pretty significant behavior issues. I think maybe just feeling a lot of frustration, anxiety. So they didn't feel like they were safe or he was safe, and they really needed some outside help. So so all that to say, now he is living, he gets Medicaid waiver services. He lives in his own apartment with 24/7 support staff with him. At some point, he'll likely have to have a roommate. But that has really provided a lot of relief to me in that I know it's unlikely he'll ever need to live in my home with my husband, and you know, we hope to have kids. But I have seen, even in him being in state services just for the few years that he has been now, how much my parents still have to be involved. And I know one day, yes, that will be my role. That will be my job to really advocate for him, because his communication skills are really limited, and so he needs somebody to support him to make choices about what he wants to do, to support his staff and kind of helping him live the life that he deserves and wants to live. So I know at some point, yes, I will kind of take over that primary role. Thank you, Eric. Janice, now that you said most of your kids, aside from the 5-year-old twins, is that right, are in their teens?
Yeah.
So were there any particular observations that you have had about your child, the siblings of your child with a disability, about what their experiences have been like in their teen years and in their sibling role, or emotions that they may be dealing with?
Well, I do know for sure that that's something that we have been on a journey with. So this is definitely, my son just turned 14 and his sister will be a teenager this year. And it's been probably the most challenging, and I'm sure it's not going to get easier before it gets harder. They, and considering COVID right now, that's also the cherry on top for everyone's emotions and kind of bottled up, and everything's coming to the surface right now. In our family personally, it has not been an easy ride. I have noticed that even when they were growing up, they spent a lot of time in their childhood years um, trying to ask questions, but not sure what type of questions they should be asking, or feeling embarrassed, but not being able to say that. Instead, it came out as like anger and frustration with not just their brother, but like their peers, and realizing that they needed their own support and they need their own place to vent, even about mom, or, me and their dad are divorced now. So, they have parallel families right now. And so that's another element to their upbringing and how they're feeling and dealing with certain things. I know regarding their brother, they go out of their way to try and help him in different ways, but there's also been a lot of resistance from their brother. And honestly, for a long time, um, me and their father were not on the same page on Christian and his disability. So I think they've seen that as a war, and it's more of a tug of war. And so, to be quite frank, um, when you're brought up where you're either praying for your brother to be healed and he's not healed, it comes a war with, is this how he should be, or is this God, or is it punishment, or what is this? And they're in the years now where they're trying to come and they're in a search and they're trying to figure that out. And I'm grateful because I have a very strong support network with my family, my husband now, my mother is extremely supportive. She's extremely involved in the community, and her organization has helped me a lot because she works directly with parents, and she works with parents to providing them support, but not to support the child directly, to help us to support our kids. And it was her encouragement that just kept pushing me, like, don't give up on them, don't keep asking those questions. There's probably a reason for the resistance, or there's a reason for the attitude. And with Christian and Caleb and Jada, they don't even really want to get along right now. So he's always pushing them away, even if they try. And it's crazy to see because when they were growing up, they were so close. And now it's like Christian's like, no, get away from me. He wants to deal with the younger kids, the twins that I have now. So it's just trying to level that out and kind of, I know sometimes they feel like they've expressed to me, I'm just not a good brother, I'm not a good sister. And I'm like, no, this is not you. Like, not taking that weight as a sibling, and realizing like there are a lot of things that they put on themselves that I haven't intentionally said, but I did not say it either. So a lot of gray area there. I've realized with them. But in regards to support, I think, like you were saying, and we're finding that community, and that's one thing that I wish I had done better, is making sure that they were connected with somebody on a regular basis when they were younger, so they still had those relationships formed as they enter those teen years. So I've been doing, like, now they're in therapy, so they do have a therapist, both of them. I'm a big advocate for therapy and talking to people that are not connected with you directly, and giving you that space to yell and express and like figure out ways you can communicate, and really learning these coping mechanisms now so that they're not adults that are struggling with being able to express themselves, and creating a space for them to be able to talk to me, which is not always easy because I'm not the approachable mom all the time. They say, you're nice to everybody, but you're not nice to us. I'm like, no, that's not true. I'm not trying to be. But, that's something that I'm definitely, like, we're on a roller coaster right now. So I don't have all the answers to the teenage years because I'm in the teenage years. So I'm actually listening to both of you all like, hey, I'm taking notes. I'll go ask more questions.
Absolutely. And teen years are hard, whether or not disability is part of the factor, I think, or part of the family fabric. And that's important to remember too, that
Yes.
that whether or not your children have disabilities, that relationships between kids and between siblings will change over time, and there will be times of tension and anger and frustration, that can have a different kind of set of influencing factors if disability is part of the picture. But regardless, I think it's important to remember that none of this is permanent, that relationships change and evolve over time, as all of us.
I think that's a good thing that you even just brought that up, like the fact that they're still siblings. And
Yeah.
so even if you take yourself out of it, like I remember my childhood, I didn't always get along with my siblings either. So not putting that you guys always have to, get along, or you can be mad at him, or he broke your stuff. So
Yeah.
stay there, like you can. So
Some
how
sibling spats are normal. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's so good that you mentioned that and sharing that. But I also had a question for you, Emma, because you asked Eric what he does with his sibling for fun. What do you do when you are for fun?
Thank you. I love that. Yeah. So I feel like my adulthood years has kind of been shifting from kind of feeling pressure to be the second mom into like, I want to be the fun sister. I want to be Evan's, place where we can just hang and do what he wants to do. I'm not stressing either of us out about like trying to work on communication skills or, I see my role a little bit as like being willing to try some of the stuff that maybe wouldn't occur to my parents to do with him, or like, to do fun things that they may not be into. So like one of my favorite, within the past couple of years, things that we did, we went to like this big, like obstacle course, outdoor climbing wall thing where like we, got strapped into a harness and did like all sorts of fun stuff, and he loved that. He loves hiking. He's in much better shape than me, so I try to keep up. He zooms through all the hiking trails. But yeah, we like to either just hang outdoors or watch movies or TV together. He is, for me, just by and large, not to say that there aren't hard times or times when his anxiety or stress levels are, hard or challenging to our relationship. But by and large, when it's just him and me, we just are kind of calm, chill. He doesn't really speak, and so we're just, like spending time hanging out, chilling, and he's a love a wonderful kind of calming, comfortable presence for me, as compared to spending time with other members of my family who I adore, but they can be more stressful, honestly. Pros and cons.
I understand. Thank you for sharing that. I was just curious. I was like, I wonder what that's like. So good. Thank you.
Well, so I think we'll wrap up here with just a couple of last questions, because I think we're about at time. But I will ask Eric, in general, if you were talking to people who may not be familiar with the self-advocacy movement, or kind of the things that folks with disabilities are really pushing for to change. What's one thing you would like to tell them to better understand your life as a person with a disability, and maybe some challenges that you face or things that you would like to be different?
Just what I would like to say to you is and it's not really a question, but I just want to thank you folks for being a part of the panel today. And what I would have to what I would have to say is that there's going to be challenges. But for folks to keep fighting.
That's awesome. A good, encouraging last words. Thank you, Eric. I guess my message to especially those of you who are professionals who may be working with families and have the opportunity to bring siblings into the picture, into the discussion, you know, if you're talking about working with kids with disabilities, just acknowledging their brothers and sisters, you know, in the therapy rooms or, you know, at school. Just, I think we can often feel a little invisible because so much of life is about our brother or sister with that those additional needs. So even just being, you know, kind of seen and acknowledged is really valuable for folks working with adults with disabilities. It is really important to me to be at the table for any discussion around Evan's future or, you know, his support planning meetings. I feel like I have a different perspective than my parents. I feel like I see Evan's strengths and skills in a different way than my parents do. Not to say that either, you know, perspective is right 100% of the time, but, or you know, I just I have a different perspective, you know, in terms of him really being encouraged to learn more skills for himself versus being dependent on staff. The perspective I bring to those conversations is I really want him to be building his independence because I know, you know, one day some of those things may fall on me to make sure that you know, he's able to take care of his health or take care of his home. And if he's dependent now on mom and dad to or his staff to do those things, I worry, you know, at some point that may be my job. And I just always want the folks in his life to remember that he's also just a 25-year-old young man and full of potential. And just because he doesn't know how to do something now doesn't mean he can't learn. And anyway, so all that to say, I hear from many siblings of folks with disabilities that we want a seat at the table to talk alongside with our siblings and with others in their lives about what their future could look like and how our lives and needs fit in alongside that as a holistic view of what our family needs or is working towards. But we'll also acknowledge not all siblings are ready or want that role. Evan's twin is living his own life as a 25-year-old young man, and I think at this point in his life, you know, it is not something he's interested in going to, you know, support planning meetings. I think at some point in the future, he certainly may, but I just think the important thing for professionals or families to take away is providing the invitation, providing the open space to ask questions without any pressure or expectation that, you know, a super active involved sibling role is always going to be our number one priority. Whether or not it doesn't impact whether or not we love and care and support our brother or sister, you know, as to whether or not we're involved in all sorts of daily support decisions, but being asked and being invited is welcome. Janice, any final thoughts, either kind of as yourself as a parent of kids with and without disabilities that you'd like professionals to better understand about your perspective or things that you think people need to better understand about siblings?
Yes. Firstly, I really appreciate you all being here and listening to us and to our panel. I really appreciate you taking that time, to all the people who are listening in. Number one, for parents, I think I'm speaking to parents first. Sometimes it's important for us to get that feedback and figure out our gray areas, because there's this unwritten rule that we are supposed to know everything and we're supposed to have it all together, and sometimes we don't. So I think taking a step back and just saying like, I don't have it all together, and admitting that to ourselves and being free from that pressure that you have to have all the answers all the time, and realizing that as your children are growing, you're growing too, and they're watching you on this journey. So extending grace and extending a lot of forgiveness and that love, it goes all the way around, and you have to give it to yourself so that your kids know and they see you practicing acts of self-care and forgiveness and grace, because everything that we do is a reflection. That's what they see in themselves, and that's what they're trying to emulate as they're growing. So if we're not setting an example of self-care and taking care of ourselves and making sure that things are in order, consistent, and that love is like trumps everything, or is the diagnosis the most important thing in our family, all that stuff, it all weighs on everybody, but we're the reflectors. Like they're looking at us as leading that. And I think that the perspective Eric just gave and Emma gave, I think that just solidifies that we have a lot more control than we think, and not control as in trying to change our kids, but guiding them and just showing them light, and making sure things are available for them, not just your child with a disability, because we will bend over backwards to find support for them. And I think that is not fair because there are resources out there for our siblings, and they deserve that support as well. And I think that it's important for providers to remind parents of that in the rooms as well, and making sure they're asking those tough questions. And even, I know my son, there was a time I had to take them all to the emergency room because Christian had a seizure. Actually, he didn't even have a seizure this time. It wasn't a seizure. He fell and hurt his arm, and everyone was like, oh, he has epilepsy. They're swarming over him. But there was this one nurse. She went and asked all the kids, how are you guys doing today? How are you? Can I get you a popsicle? Can I do something? And my son came back to me, and he was like maybe 8. And he was like, she asked about me. She asked me what I needed, if I needed anything. And it was such a big, like, to me, it meant so much, because it was like I was so worried and consumed with their brother that I wasn't even thinking like, how are they dealing with this situation right now? I wasn't even dealing with them. And then for somebody to come in and stand in the gap for us and stand in the gap for me as a parent, we appreciate things like that, because we can't do everything for everybody every time. Like, this unrealistic, it's not possible. So it's important to find a community and to support each other, and ask those questions to the parent. Ask the parent, even when they're in the meeting about their one child, ask about the other kids, because it's a dynamic, it's a family unit. And if anybody is out of balance, the whole family is out of balance. So I think that's just an important reminder for both the community, for parents in general. And as parents, as the kids are getting older, and this is something that I'm working on, and my kids are not adults right now, so I can't say that from a direct perspective, but I have spoke to a lot of adult siblings, and realizing that we don't have all the answers. And I want to say that again, we don't have all the answers. Listening to our siblings is probably rule number one. Give them space to share without already having a predetermined thought about what you're going to do, or you're just not really taking it in. Because there's some things that I realized with my son, like Kayla will say, Christian could do that. And I'm like, no, we can't do it. And he's like, I've seen him do it. Like, I've seen him do it. I'm like, so what am I doing it for? He was like, I don't know. You just like to do it. I was like, no, I don't like to do this. He was like, well, Christian can do it because when I'm with him, he does it. I don't do it for him. So realizing, like, there are certain things that, and it's not a shot at you as parents, but there's room for improvement, and there's always room for improvement. If we're not improving, I plan and hope to be improving well into my 60s, 70s. I want to be able to say that I'm not the same parent that I was when I had them. And my children can see that growth, to know that it's possible, because they were there on the rough times. They were there when the diagnosis happened. So they saw mom and how she was like so frantic. But then they also see now how she's free, and she's feeling it, and she's confident, and she's handling things. And so that they know that it's not a scary thing. You can be scared, but it's not scary. So those are the things I would leave you with from a parent's perspective. And I just appreciate you guys all for being here. Emma, thank you for sharing. Eric, thank you for sharing. I learned from each of you, and I look forward to staying connected. Connected with both of you as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Janine. All right. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Emma, Janice, and Eric. That was such a great way to start this pre-conference. I hope you guys are looking at the chat and seeing all the comments and gratitude that everybody is giving to you. For our attendees, we do have a couple minutes for Q&A. Definitely put it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you if you have any questions for Emma and Janice today.
Thank you guys for all the kind words in the chat. Really appreciate it.
And the feeling is mutual. Thank you so much. I was really grateful to be on the panel with you, Emma, and I hope that we were able to share some things with everybody else, that you guys were able to take some good tidbits from us.
Yeah,
thanks, Nora.
Continuing to give give their thanks for you.
I think just until, oh, here's a question. Yeah. I'm curious how you handle differences between siblings and parents on how to care for the person with a disability. Hot topic in our household. Yeah, it's challenging. Again, I can only offer my own perspective, but I'm 32. I feel like I spent a lot of my 20s feeling like I was kind of battling my parents. That may be extreme, but that we really had different opinions about what would be best for my brother and the best way to go about getting the supports that we each thought he needed. And, you know, I feel like I right now have just arrived at through some therapy, a place of peace where I know that I will be a primary decision maker for determining what kind of supports that Evan receives later in life. So for right now, I'm trying to live my own life and share my opinion, share my perspective as it is informed again by how the things that we support Evan to do now in his 20s will impact not only his life, but my life later. You know, for example, right now, his social network, his people who love and care about him are just our family and, you know, a couple of paid staff that have been with him for a while. He has not really gotten the support that he needs to either maintain friendships from high school or make new friends or go out and about and meet folks who will love and care about him. And I'm not sure that my parents fully realize, you know, that while that may not have a huge impact on him right now because they're super active and seeing him just about every other day, down the road, you know, I think he's really going to feel that gap. And if I and, you know, maybe my husband and his twin are the only folks in his life that are, you know, checking in on him and spending time with him and caring about him. So that's all that to say. I just try to keep planting those seeds with my folks, but ultimately kind of letting go of what I can't control right now and valuing living my own life right now. So that's not a great answer, but just my perspective.
No, thank you. I think everybody in the chat box and at home is feeling validated for all those feelings, you know, growing up, being in the teen years and now as an adult. So thank you all for being on the panel and sharing your perspectives with us. For the attendees, I think we might wrap up because we are close to the end and we have another session starting in just a couple minutes here. So again, for the attendees, if you need CEUs, please place your name in the chat box for us, just so we can verify attendance. And then I'll put the link in the chat box for the next 2 sessions that you guys can go to. So up next, we have the promise of employment first, and then supporting and engaging siblings of people with disabilities in today's world. And Janice and Eric, thank you again so much for attending today and being on this panel.